Hey everyone, ready to really dive deep today?
Always. What are we thinking about today?
We're tackling something that I think is on everyone's mind a lot.
Time.
Yeah, time, that elusive thing.
Exactly. And, it can feel kind of overwhelming to even think about, making the most of it.
Definitely. I know I can fall down that rabbit hole.
So to ground us a little, we're going to be using this podcast episode. It's called Time is Running Out. Catchy title, right?
It definitely grabs your attention.
Right. But don't worry, we're not going to leave you in an existential crisis.
Yeah, we're here to pull out the useful stuff, right? The actionable stuff.
Exactly. So, the episode starts out with this, kind of shocking statistic. They're saying that on average, a human lifespan is only around 29,000 days.
Wow. When you put it like that,
Yeah.
It really makes you think, how many of those days are already gone?
Right. Poof. It puts things in perspective. It totally does.
Yeah.
But I think that's the point they were going for, in the podcast. It's not about, freaking out about running out of time. It's more about, kind of that wake-up call to be more deliberate with how we use the time we got.
It is a limited resource, right?
For sure. Even though it can feel like, oh, there's always tomorrow or next week.
I know, I can get caught up in that.
Totally, me too. And then boom, procrastination station.
Oh, tell me about it. I am the mayor of Procrastination City.
Well, good news is you're not alone. I think we've all been there.
You think?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? This podcast gets into the nitty-gritty of why we procrastinate in the first place.
Okay, so it's not just because we're lazy.
Well, sometimes, maybe. But they were saying a lot of the time, it's actually tied to, deeper stuff,
Deeper stuff, what do you mean?
Like fear of failure, or this pressure to be perfect, which, let's be real, that gets us nowhere.
It's true. You get so hung up on it being perfect, you never even start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's just feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, I've definitely been there. When you just look at a task and it's nope, can't even.
Yeah.
Gonna go scroll through my phone instead.
Oh my gosh, the phone procrastination. I'm guilty of that.
It's such a trap.
The worst. And you know how they describe procrastination in this episode?
How?
Choosing comfort over progress.
Comfort over progress. I like that. Makes you think.
Right. So we're choosing a little bit of ease now, but it's at what cost? What are we giving up in the long run by making that choice over and over?
It's like we're trading in future happiness for a little bit of comfort right now.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole conversation about time so interesting.
Yeah.
What happens if we flip that script?
And choose progress over comfort.
Yeah. What could we achieve? It makes you think. It really makes you think about all those times we put things off,
Oh, absolutely.
Even just those little things, they add up.
They do, when you hit the snooze button.
Yes. Exactly, the snooze button. It's so tempting in the moment, but then those minutes, they turn into hours,
Yeah, it's this slow drip, drip, drip of lost time.
And what they were saying on the podcast is that it's compound interest, but in reverse.
Oh, I like that analogy. Debt by procrastination.
Right. Every time we choose that instant gratification, that comfort, over doing something that moves us toward our goal.
It's we're adding to this pile of unrealized potential or something.
Exactly. Unrealized potential. I love that. It's what could we be doing with that time if we weren't so busy hitting the snooze button on our lives?
Seriously. And it's so easy to let those minutes slip away. It feels insignificant in the moment.
Totally. But then think about it this way. What if instead of scrolling for an hour before bed?
Okay, don't judge.
No judgment. We've all been there. But what if we took just 30 minutes of that time, even just 30 minutes, and dedicated it to a goal? Something we've been wanting to do.
Okay, so half the scroll time, use it for a goal.
Exactly. It doesn't seem like much, but it adds up so quickly. 30 minutes a day, that's over 3 hours a week.
Wow, yeah, when you put it that way.
That's almost a full work day every single month.
It's crazy, right?
And I know. It's easier said than done. I struggle with this too. But the podcast made this point. It really resonated with me. They said, it's never too late to start.
Oh, I love that. It's never too late.
Right. We can always choose to reclaim our time, starting right now.
Absolutely. No matter how much time we think we've wasted, there's always more time to be had.
Exactly. We just have to be intentional about it.
It's all about taking control.
And sometimes, taking control means making tough choices.
Like what?
Like learning to say no.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is. It's so hard to say no.
It really is, especially when, you want to please people or you're worried about missing out.
FOMO is real.
So real.
But here's the thing, and they talked about this on the podcast. Every time we say yes to something, we're also saying no to something else.
That's a good way to think about it. It's like a trade-off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we're saying yes to working late, we might be saying no to family dinner. Or if we say yes to that social commitment, we might be saying no to a night in working on our side hustle.
Right. Or even just saying no to some much-needed relaxation time.
Exactly. And the podcast hosts, they really emphasize that learning to set those boundaries and say no to the things that aren't truly important to us is crucial for taking back our time.
So it's about getting clear on our values and then making sure our time reflects those values.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, someone else is deciding how we spend our time.
Exactly. And it's our lives, we get to decide.
We do. So, given all this, they left us with this pretty intense question, and I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Hit me with it. I'm ready.
Okay, so they said, imagine you only have 29,000 days left. And, I mean, let's be real, none of us really knows how many days we have.
Right, that's the thing, right? Like, we never know.
Exactly. But knowing that life is finite, what would you start doing differently? Like, today?
It's a big question, for sure.
It really is.
But it's also kind of, like, freeing in a way,
Free? How so?
Well, because it cuts through all the noise, all the shoulds and the coulds and the what ifs.
Right, it forces you to be real with yourself.
Yes, exactly. It's like, okay, this is it. This is all the time I've got. What am I going to do with it?
No pressure, right.
Right. But seriously, when you really let that question sink in, it changes things. At least it did for me.
In what way?
It made me realize that I was spending way too much time on things that didn't really matter to me,
Oh, I've been there. Like, why am I scrolling through this again? This isn't even interesting.
Exactly. Or, like, why am I saying yes to this thing when I really just want to stay home and read a book?
Right.
So it's about being more intentional, asking myself, is this how I want to be spending my precious time?
That's a great question to ask yourself, actually.
Right. And if the answer is no, then something needs to change.
You've got to make some adjustments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be this huge, dramatic overhaul of your entire life,
It can be small changes.
Totally. Like, maybe instead of watching TV for an hour after work, I'll spend 30 minutes calling a friend.
Or finally signing up for that pottery class.
Yes, exactly. It's about making those little shifts, making sure that your time aligns with what you actually care about.
Because if you're not careful, it's so easy to let life just happen to you,
Oh, 100%. You get caught up in the day-to-day, and next thing you know, a year's gone by, and you're like, wait, what did I even do?
It's like you were on autopilot that whole time.
Totally. And that's what this whole conversation about time is really about, right? Waking ourselves up from that autopilot and making conscious choices.
It's about designing a life where you actually have time for the things that matter to you.
Exactly. Your priorities, your passions, your people. It's about making those things non-negotiable.
I love that. Making them non-negotiable.
Because at the end of the day, all we have is time, right?
It's our most valuable resource, that's for sure.
For sure. And that's what this podcast episode really drove home for me. It's like a good reminder to not take it for granted.
So true. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. But like we always say, the conversation doesn't have to end here.
Absolutely not.
Keep thinking about that question. If you only had 29,000 days left, what would you do differently?
What would you change today?
What would you finally say yes to? Or maybe even more importantly, what would you finally say no to?
Ooh, good one.
Let us know your thoughts. Hit us up on social media. Send us an email. We love hearing from you.
And until next time, make those moments count, everyone.
You got it.